Welcome to Digital Discussions. Today we're going to discuss GDPR, which is short for the General Data Protection Regulation. It's one of the hottest topics in the industry right now, and it discusses how the industry will have to change its approach to personal privacy, managing information and managing data. The rights of EU citizens has been greatly enhanced by GDPR. Today we'll give you a pragmatic approach on how to look at the issues, understand the impact, understand our lessons learned, and take some pragmatic steps on how to move forward in an accelerated way towards GDPR compliance. GDPR seems to be confusing everybody. So the purpose of today is to try and demystify it and simplify an awful lot of the key concepts and topics that are driving everyone crazy at the moment. What's your take right now on the impact of GDPR? What does it mean to you?
So from my perspective, GDPR is a massive issue for a lot of our customers, depending on their overall data management maturity level. So some customers who've got really good data management, data governance policies in place will probably find the transition to becoming GDPR compliant much less painful than those customers who have traditionally just bought more and more infrastructure because that's often been cheaper than taking data governance seriously. Nevertheless, with both camps, there's still a massive piece of effort moving forward to become a little bit more compliant. And we need to help our customers take the responsibility away from IT directly and move it back up to the board level.
It's kind of interesting, there's two things you said, Colin, you said in your introduction. It's a hot topic just now, and it absolutely is front of mind for an awful lot of customers. Tom, when you just said there, you used the word issue. So I'm not sure how much it is an issue for customers, but it's also an opportunity. You know, it's an opportunity to get their house in order, to do things that they should have been doing with both their data, the security elements around the data, around the personally identifiable information that they may be holding. So it's an opportunity as well for them to have the infrastructure, the data management techniques, the security around that to take their business forward. So, you know, one of the other things we'll talk about really is data-driven businesses. GDPR can form the basis of being able to take a business forward is kind of how I see it. I think it is a challenge for a lot of customers. I think a lot of customers are not ready for it, but it is an opportunity for them as well as being an issue.
So data-driven business is actually a key point, but one of the major points of confusion is GDPR a information issue, a security issue, a process issue, all the above? Who wants to go first with that one?
Well, you know, it's probably all of the above. You know, so it's certainly not an IT issue. It's not something that an IT department is going to solve on their own. Is it something that you need a compliance officer for? You need a data protection officer for? Is the CEO ultimately responsible for it? So there's not one answer to that question. Absolutely, there's a security element to it. You know, so if you're breached and you have to notify, that's one element of it. As Tom said, you have to get your data in order, so there's definitely an information element to it, and there's a compliance element to it as well, and actually also being able to produce data for people in a timely fashion relies on having infrastructure in place, which does bring in IT. It relies on having the processes in place. You might need some legal requirements in there as well, so it's multiple touch points.
There seems to be a massive amount of change in the rights that the EU citizen has for the use, management, protection, storage of their data. Do you want to discuss some of those articles that refer to specific user rights? For example, right to be forgotten, right to data portability. What's your view on that? How will organisations manage that side rather than the technology-based side?
So I think that's actually probably the most challenging area to address under GDPR, because you can't just sweep those rights under the carpet with some business process changes. So as an EU citizen, I have the right to ask for any business for a copy of my personally identifiable information. And that has to be delivered to me in a timely manner, usually within 30 days. Now I could go to an ex-employer, or I could go to a retailer that I've done business with, and I can say, can you please give me a copy of all the information you hold on me that's effectively personally identifiable? That could be my email address, that could be cookie information that they can see from my browser, it might be all the historical IP addresses they hold on me. And they have to be able to deliver that to me, probably via a secure portal.
Bill, with your information governance background, what's your view right now on I suppose, the success, the effectiveness of organisations in their data discovery activities?
Oh, so I think there's a kind of wide variety of capabilities and progress along the road to both understanding what data companies have, what the sources of data have, where the data is coming from. It's one of the reasons we work with companies like Veritas, to be able to identify what data is held. If you're looking to drive value from data, but you don't want to give up personal information, you might have to anonymise that data as well. So that's something we're seeing a lot of just now, the data masking, data anonymisation. That's quite prevalent in our customer base just now. The first step really to GDPR compliance in the information side, not touching the security side or any kind of legal side, but from the information side, the first thing really companies are starting to do is identify what data they have, what data they hold, how valuable it is to the business, because some of that data will be of no value, will be no consequence to a business. So maybe 30, 40, 50% of data that companies are holding just now is of no consequence to the business operations. However, the remaining piece of that data has value. The other 50%, they may still have to hold. So they have to hold it in line with a way that it is discoverable if necessary. If it might be that it's kind of trivial data that they want to delete, get rid of, maybe archive on platform and on premises or to the cloud, but they still have to hold certain elements of data.
So if we look historically over the last 20 years within the industry, 20 years ago, a reasonable sized organisation may have had a 1 or 2 terabyte data storage array on premise. And a few years later, they probably would have upgraded to a 10 terabyte array, just taken all that information with them. A few years later, maybe gone to 100 terabytes. Now we're knocking on the door of a petabyte is affordable, or we're looking at most AWS customers, for example, have got 500 terabytes or more under management in the cloud. In Azure, it's a similar capacity. And just think of 20 years ago, that marketing database that we used for sending out Christmas cards or maybe a bottle of bubbly to our favourite customers. If that was hiding in a 1 terabyte array 20 years ago, and it's just been migrated and migrated and migrated and migrated, how on earth are we going to find that today? Because the data might be orphaned, it might be on a LUN that's no longer connected to anything, and it's that information, that personally identifiable information that's probably in clear text that has all our customers' information, their names and addresses. That's the sort of information I think is really going to sink us unless we actually look at addressing it and finding it. And that's the sort of data that we never bothered deleting because it was cheaper to just go from a 1 terabyte to a 10 terabyte array than it was to actually do the decent information governance and determine whether we needed the file or not. And typically we find a subject access request with external legal counsel could cost upwards of £10,000 or £15,000 to actually go through and do a full report. And when you look at historically under the Data Protection Act of '98, the teeth weren't really very sharp of the ICO. So we could just say, do you know what, we'll take the fine. We're not going to bother finding that information for you. We can't be bothered to do that subject access request, and we'll take a £10,000 fine, thanks very much. But now under GDPR, the ICO really has some quite sharp teeth. And whilst I don't want to make this about all the bad stuff that could happen under GDPR, a fine will be taken a little bit more seriously by both sides. And we'll be able to demonstrate that it's actually of a significant cost benefit to an organisation to start to look at addressing their data management challenges.
I think you're absolutely right that governance of data is absolutely key going forward. Customers and clients have to start getting their house in order. But I guess that's only one half of it. So we've talked about the information half. There's still, on your side, there's security elements of it as well. So you have to look at what companies are doing around the security elements.
Yeah, I suppose I can take that one. We're seeing a massive increase in the use of encryption. Now, encryption isn't the silver bullet to everything, but encryption does give you a degree of protection post data loss. One I'd like to give back to both of you really is, and you can't really have a GDPR conversation without discussing it, 72-hour notification of a substantial data breach. Do we believe organisations today are in the right shape, with the right processes, with the right behaviour to undertake that?
I think it's a commonly accepted truth throughout the industry that all organisations have probably been hacked. Only a few actually know about it. So genuinely, I don't think organisations will be ready to report that because they probably won't even know about it.
It's fundamental for the rights of the citizen. If I'm an EU citizen, it's my data. I should be confident that an organisation will notify me within a reasonable time frame if my data could be published externally within the hands of people that I don't expect it to be. An organisation today, it shouldn't fall to the IT manager or the CIO. There should be a formal approach to briefing the right individuals in the right manner, and there also should be the right, almost triage team to go back and really understand and traverse the steps required to understand what have we lost, what's the impact of that loss, what have we done to almost offset the fact that we've been breached. And that's a big change to the current way we deliver IT security, information security, even though some would say we should have always behaved in that way.
Your original question was, are companies ready for it? You know, the kind of short answer is no, companies are not ready just now. So they have to have the processes and start to get the processes in place at least. And it's probably now that they have to start doing it. You know, we're hitting May 2018 is coming toward us like a train just now. So, you know, the time is starting to run out to start to get those processes in place. So I think it is important that if they're going to act, not to say they are going to act, but assuming they are going to act, they really have to start now because the timeframes are very short because there's so many component parts to it that they have to address.
Computacenter approach GDPR in quite a pragmatic way. There have been quite a few fear, uncertainty and doubt type plays for GDPR. And one of them, most notably, is the fines, the extent, the size of the fines. So if I open this to both of you, and in fact I'll go to Tom first, fines, 4%, 20 million?
I think that there will be some significant fines under GDPR because both our local ICO and the Supervisory Council sitting above the ICO will want to make an example of people who are behaving particularly poorly.
I think we are likely to see fines for someone, for something, when it comes into force. But yeah, I think that feels negative to me. I mean, I don't like the negative reinforcement. I think absolutely this is a positive opportunity for companies. So we use the phrase "get your house in order," but also if you're able to show that you're GDPR compliant, it then comes with a level of confidence from the public. People like me that I know that I can get my personal identifiable information back. That's then got the opportunity to boost share prices. You know, so it actually has an advantage to the business. I don't think it's necessarily. There has been a lot of negative press around it, and a lot of the things you see and you read and you hear is really about the fine element of it. Absolutely, for me, it's much more of an opportunity to take the business forward.
I think my next point would be, so how do you check? So there's an awful lot of discussion and debate about privacy impact assessments, PIAs, but they're almost pushed to one side as a compliance checklist tick box. Surely they're quite important in relation to all of this.
So yes, absolutely. I think they're really important, and it may not be a technology-led privacy impact assessment. Technology may still be a part of it, but again, sorry to keep talking about it, but it comes right back down to looking at the business processes that an organisation has. But I think it's just as important as a health and safety impact assessment would be. For the last 20 years, we've seen health and safety posters up all over the place, and everybody understands that there's a basic health and safety implication within the workplace. I think that GDPR assessment, privacy impact assessment, is going to be along the same lines.
And that's perfect. So that leads me on to watching a discussion of this sort, where many of the common points have been touched on, the key discussion topics that many of our customers discuss have been debated. If I were watching this, I'd want to know, so what do I do now? What happens tomorrow? What happens in an hour's time? What should be my next steps? So first to you, then to you, and I might well finish off at the end. What should be the pragmatic first step, next step? What should organisations be doing right now?
Well, I think initially they need to understand that GDPR exists and get a little bit of a handle as to what it means to their business, and then look at whether they want to do anything further than that or not. And we've been working together over the last year or so to look at really exactly those next steps and map backwards from 25th of May 2018 to understand what needs to be done by when, by whom in an organisation. And I think that mapping the articles, the responsibilities in the business, that's something that the bigger organisations may want to do. As we look at tangible next steps, it's take it seriously, understand where the risk is in your organisation. That may require automated incremental technology, or it may just be that business process analysis may be adequate for you, depending again on the risk profile that your company has. And so I guess on to Bill, how would you supplement that?
Yeah, no, so I think there's a few things. So the topic is silver bullet. Any one organisation having the silver bullet to GDPR probably doesn't exist. I've not come across any single organisation that will deliver every component part of it. So that's where solution providers like Computacenter come into play. I think what we've done, working with companies like Veritas over the last year or so, has to put together a fairly pragmatic set of steps, really starting with an assessment or a readiness assessment to create that base level for organisations to understand where they are. And then we have a set of components that we can deliver to address areas within their business to make them compliant.
So I think what's really important to note is that as organisations build up towards May 2018, the effort doesn't fade away afterwards. It's really important that companies identify areas of risk so that they can take appropriate action, but they continue to monitor the environment, they continue to protect the environment to make sure that any personally identifiable information that, for example, they've deleted because of a particular request from an individual remains deleted. So if a server crashes and someone restores an older backup, there needs to be a business process in place to check that previously deleted information isn't then restored to a server. And that's where we're seeing a lot of organisations move away, I think, from long-term backups towards shorter-term backups for DR and more practical archiving of information that needs to be retained for the longer term. So it's not just about that big run to the finish line. There's going to be an ongoing process afterwards, an ongoing budget that's required as part of just your traditional IT spend then to ensure that you remain as compliant as possible after May 2018.
And process is a word that we've all three used an awful lot through the whole of this discussion, and probably something underplayed through the whole of this GDPR journey over the last 2 or 3 years. We've spent an awful lot of time and put an awful lot of rigour into our understanding of the processes required, but more importantly to educate our customers of the new processes and behaviours they require to arrive at a point of GDPR compliance and maintain it. Because we can't get away from the fact that GDPR compliance is helping them as custodians of our digital data to deliver things in the right manner.
Well, so I'm used to seeing 20 years worth of email, I'm used to seeing 20 years worth of file history. But one of the actions that Veritas has taken internally is to definitely use our own portfolio to identify areas of risk within our organisation. We're an organisation with 3 decades of history in information management, information governance and data recovery. And so we've got decades of information employees who have been in the company since its inception. So now we've changed our policies to ensure that we only retain email for the minimum amount of time. Our file store retention periods are decreasing significantly as well to ensure that we're not accidentally keeping personally identifiable information in our file stores. So we're spending an awful lot of effort to ensure that we are as compliant as anyone can be, because otherwise our suppliers, our customers won't take us seriously.
At Computacenter, we decided we had to be ready as well. We had to be seen to be active in this market. There's no point us advising customers on something that we haven't done ourselves. So I guess one of the things I've seen over the last year is new roles appearing within our business. So a chief data officer has appeared, a data protection officer has appeared. So we are starting to invest in ourselves to make sure that equally, along with our customers and along with the rest of the wider industry, that we're as ready as we can be as well. And similarly, we've been trading for over 30 years. We have that legacy of data that we have to manage. We have to make sure we are compliant with GDPR. So we have seen these new rules evolve and emerge within our business.
That's one of the best messages that we can take to our joint clients, is that we've been there, we've done it, or at least we're a very good way through doing it, so we can actually advise with confidence based on a lot of what we found out about ourselves. I think that we can help other customers find those things out about themselves as well, and help them make those tough decisions to cut that 30-year-old information away that's just not relevant to the businesses anymore. Yeah.
And that's probably the ideal point. Be ready, get ready, act now. That's probably the ideal point for me to close our digital discussion. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you. Thanks to all of you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed our GDPR digital discussion. The date can't be moved. May 25th, 2018 is a fixed date. There are an awful lot of activities that we all need to undertake between now and then to get closer to GDPR compliance than organisations are today. If you have any more questions, you can reach us via our Q&A. But apart from that, all that leaves me to do is say thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed our digital discussion, and look out for a future digital discussion on a different topic.